Hello, YouTube. Historical Doug, back with 10 more historical figures you've heard of but don't know why. Chapter 4. There are a couple on this list you may not have heard of at all, but probably should have. They were new to me. As usual, they are in no particular order. First up is a figure who comes to us from the United Kingdom, Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell was born in Huntingdon, Cambridgeshire, England in 1599 to a modest but respected family. He attended Cambridge University and briefly studied law. But when his father died, he returned home to manage the family estate. His early years were marked by deep Puritan faith, personal struggle, and a growing conviction that England's monarchy had lost its moral compass. By the 1630s, King Charles I ruled England without parliament, enforcing taxes and religious conformity that angered many, including Cromwell. When Parliament was finally recalled in 1640, Cromwell entered politics as a fiery but little-known member of the Commons. His speeches were reported to be blunt, his beliefs uncompromising, that the king must answer to the people under God. When civil war erupted in 1642, Cromwell raised a cavalry unit from among his neighbors, farmers and Puritans who shared his zeal. They became the backbone of the Ironsides, disciplined soldiers who claimed to fight not for plunder, but for principle. Their success propelled Cromwell upward through the ranks of the parliamentarian army. At Marston Moor and Naseby, Cromwell's leadership proved decisive. By 1646, the king was captured, and England's centuries-old monarchy was shaken to its core. But peace did not follow. Cromwell's forces, mistrustful of Parliament's half measures, took control. When Charles I was accused of treason and executed in 1649, it marked what many considered a shocking moment, a king tried and killed by his own subjects. The monarchy was abolished and the Commonwealth of England was born. Cromwell, though reluctant, emerged as a striving force. As Lord Protector from 1653, he sought to create a godly nation, closing theaters, promoting Protestant morality, and centralizing power. Abroad, his navy expanded England's influence. At home, his rule grew stern, even authoritarian. Cromwell's campaigns in Ireland and Scotland, brutal by measure, left lasting scars, actions that earned him both fear and hatred. When Cromwell died in 1658, England was weary of Puritan rule. Within 2 years, the monarchy was restored under Charles II. Cromwell's body was exhumed, hanged, and decapitated, a grim symbol of revenge. Yet his legacy endures in paradox, a man of faith who destroyed tyranny only to wield it himself. To some, he is England's liberator, to others, a regicidal dictator. But to history, Oliver Cromwell remains a figure who forever changed the balance between king, parliament, and conscience. Historical figure number 2 brings us across the Atlantic to the United States. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was born in 1815 in Johnstown, New York, a time when women were denied the right to vote, to own property independently, or to speak publicly on political matters. From an early age, Stanton challenged those boundaries. Her father, a respected judge, often lamented that she was not a boy, words that may have lit a lifelong fire in her. Likely determined to prove her intellect, she excelled in her studies, reading law in her father's office and gaining a deep understanding of the legal injustices faced by women. In 1840, while attending the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London with her new husband, Henry Stanton, she met Lucretia Mott, a fellow reformer. The two were reportedly outraged when female delegates were denied seats because of their gender. That experience appears to have planted the seed for a new cause, women's rights. 8 years later, in 1848, Stanton and Mott organized the Seneca Falls Convention in upstate New York, the first women's rights convention in American history. Stanton drafted the Declaration of Sentiments, modeled after the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming that all men and women are created equal. It demanded suffrage, the right to vote, what many considered a radical idea at the time. For decades, Stanton worked tirelessly alongside Susan B. Anthony, her closest collaborator and friend. Stanton wrote the speeches, Anthony delivered them across the nation. Together they built the foundation of the American women's suffrage movement, calling not just for voting rights, but for broader equality in marriage, education, and employment. But Stanton's views sometimes set her apart. She advocated for liberalized divorce laws, criticized organized religion for its treatment of women, and pushed for equality beyond the ballot box. Though controversial, her ideas planted seeds that would grow long after her time. Elizabeth Cady Stanton continued to write and speak into her 80s, producing The Woman's Bible and volumes of her autobiography, 80 Years and More. She died in 1902, nearly 20 years before women finally won the right to vote in 1920. Though she did not live to see her dream fulfilled, Elizabeth Cady Stanton's courage and intellect helped ignite a movement that reshaped the American ideal of equality. Her legacy endures in every vote cast and every voice raised for women's rights. Historical figure number 4 takes us back to Europe, to Germany, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe was born in 1749 in Frankfurt and was considered a prodigy. By his teens, Goethe was writing poetry and immersing himself in Latin, Greek, and the natural sciences. He studied law at the University of Leipzig, but his heart was never in statutes and contracts. Instead, he was drawn to poetry, painting, and stirrings of human emotion. After an illness brought him home, he continued writing, and soon his words electrified Europe. In 1774, at just 25, Goethe published The Sorrows of Young Werther, a novel that captured the intensity of youthful passion and despair. Its emotional realism sparked a literary sensation and a wave of imitation across the continent. Soon after, Goethe was invited to Weimar by Duke Karl August, where he would remain for most of his life. There he became a statesman, overseeing mines, roads, and the military. In Weimar, he befriended Friedrich Schiller, and together they helped forge the movement known as Weimar Classicism, a fusion of Enlightenment reason and romantic feeling. Their collaboration produced some of Germany's greatest literary works. But Goethe was no mere poet. He studied botany, color theory, and anatomy, challenging Newton's optics and classifying plants. He believed nature was a living entity, that art and science were both paths to truth. His life's masterpiece, Faust, consumed him for decades. This tragic story of a scholar who sells his soul for knowledge and pleasure mirrored Goethe's own lifelong quest to understand the human spirit. Faust Part II was completed in 1831. Goethe died in 1832 at the age of 38. His reported last words, "More light," seemed to capture both the poet's scientific curiosity and his spiritual yearning. Once again, back across the Atlantic, we come to historical figure number 4, Benito Juarez. Juarez, a Zapotec, was born in the rugged mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico in 1806. He would rise from poverty to reshape his nation, and his life would become a symbol of justice, reform, and national sovereignty. Orphaned at a young age, Juarez grew up herding sheep in a small village, but at age 12, he walked over 40 miles to the city of Oaxaca in search of an education. There, priests and teachers recognized his intelligence and helped him study law. His focus became defending the rights of Mexico's indigenous people like himself. By the 1830s, Juarez had become a respected lawyer and a politician known for his honesty and intellect. He opposed the power of the military and the church, which dominated Mexican politics. His guiding belief appeared to be the law should be above all men, rich or poor, powerful or humble. In 1855, after years of political upheaval, Juarez joined a movement that sought to modernize Mexico. As Minister of Justice and later President, he introduced sweeping reform laws, ending the church's control over education, abolishing special privileges for clergy and military officers, and redistributing church lands to the people. These reforms enraged many of the powerful and plunged Mexico into civil war. In 1862, France invaded Mexico, installing Emperor Maximilian I on the throne, but Juarez refused to yield. For years, he led a government in exile, moving constantly through remote towns, keeping alive the flame of the Republic. With U.S. support after the Civil War, Juarez's forces finally triumphed. Maximilian was captured and executed in 1867. Juarez returned to Mexico City as a national hero, the defender of Mexican independence. In his final years, Juarez continued to work to rebuild Mexico, expanding education, strengthening democracy, and promoting equality before the law. On July 18th, 1872, Benito Juarez died at his desk, still serving as president. Today, Juarez is remembered as El Benemitero de las Americas, the meritorious one of the Americas, a man of humble origin who proved that integrity and perseverance can transform a nation. He is famously quoted as saying, El respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. Respect for the rights of others is peace. Back to England for historical figure number 5 for another look at a pioneer of the early women's rights movement. Mary Wollstonecraft was born in 1759 in London, where she grew up in a turbulent household marked by her father's violence and financial instability. From this hardship appears to have emerged a fierce sense of justice. She believed that the world could and must be better, especially for women. After working as a governess and teacher, Wollstonecraft believed that girls were trained to be obedient rather than educated. This experience drove her to write her first major work, Thoughts on the Education of Daughters, in 1789, a quiet but radical call for change. In 1792, she shook the world. Her book, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, declared that women were not inferior by nature, only by lack of opportunity. She demanded equal education, rational marriage, and independence of thought. During the French Revolution, Wollstonecraft traveled to Paris, eager to see liberty and equality in action. She witnessed both the promise and the chaos of revolution, writing A Vindication of the Rights of Men to defend democratic ideals. Her personal life, too, defied convention. Her relationship with philosopher William Godwin, another radical thinker, was reportedly one of equality and respect. Together they had a daughter, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, who would later write the classic novel Frankenstein. In 1797, only days after giving birth, Mary Wollstonecraft died at just 38, but her ideas would outlive her, inspiring generations of feminists and reformers, from John Stuart Mill to the suffragettes. Figure number 6 takes us to 13th century Italy. Thomas Aquinas was born in 1225 in Roccasecca, Italy. Aquinas entered the world during a time of faith, philosophy, and political turmoil. From a noble family destined for knighthood or power, Aquinas chose a different path, one of study, reflection, and devotion. At just 5 years old, Aquinas was sent to the Benedictine Abbey of Monte Cassino, where his curiosity flourished. The monks taught him the foundation of theology, but one question appears to have obsessed him. What is God? As a teenager, Aquinas attended the University of Naples, where he encountered Aristotle's philosophy. His logical mind was reportedly captivated. Could reason and faith truly work together? When Aquinas decided to join the Dominican order, a group of humble traveling friars, his noble family was outraged. They locked him in a tower for over a year, trying to change his mind. But Aquinas refused to abandon his calling. When he finally escaped, he rejoined the Dominicans and began a lifelong mission to untie faith and reason. At the University of Paris, Aquinas became a towering figure. Though quiet and contemplative, his intellect earned him the nickname the Dumb Ox, until his teacher, Albertus Magnus, famously replied, "This ox will bellow so loud that his voice will be heard throughout the world." His writings prove that prophecy true. His greatest work, the Summa Theologica, sought to explain Christian theology through logic and reason. Aquinas argued that both faith and intellect led to truth, faith revealing what reason cannot, and reason deepening faith's understanding. Near the end of his life, after a mystical experience while saying Mass, Aquinas stopped writing altogether, saying, "All I have written seems like straw compared to what I have seen." Thomas Aquinas died in 1274. Canonized as a saint and declared a doctor of the Church, he remains one of history's greatest thinkers, a man who proved that reason need not oppose faith, but can instead illuminate it. Okay, we travel back to Germany for historical figure number 7, Johannes Kepler. Born in 1571 in the small German town of Wilderstadt, Johannes Kepler grew up under the glow of the stars, a world that fascinated him from childhood. Frail in health but sharp in mind, he studied theology and mathematics at the University of Tübingen, where he encountered the revolutionary ideas of Copernicus, that the planets revolved around the sun. In 1600, Kepler joined the brilliant but temperamental Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe in Prague. Tycho's detailed planetary observations would prove crucial. When Tycho died the following year, Kepler inherited this treasure trove of data and the monumental challenge to make sense of the motion of the planets. Kepler turned his attention to Mars, the most stubborn of the planets to fit any circular model. After years of relentless calculation, he made a stunning discovery. Planets do not move in perfect circles, but in ellipses. This became his first law of planetary motion. Then came the second law. The planets move faster when near the sun and slower when farther away. And finally, the third law, which revealed a mathematical harmony between the time a planet takes to orbit the sun and its distance from it. Kepler believed the universe was built on divine geometry, a cosmic symphony where mathematics was the language of God. His 1619 masterpiece, Harmonices Mundi, The Harmony of the World, expressed this belief, combining music, geometry, and astronomy in one vision of celestial order. Though he endured poverty, religious conflict, and the loss of his family, Kepler never lost faith in the power of reason. His Rudolphine tables, published in 1627, became the foundation of modern celestial navigation. When Johannes Kepler died in 1630, he left behind more than scientific laws. He left a vision of the cosmos guided not by chaos, but by harmony. His discoveries paved the way for Isaac Newton and the physics that would explain why the planets move as they do. Kepler once wrote, "I am stealing the golden vessels of the Egyptians to build a tabernacle for my God." We move now to the continent of Africa for historical figure number 8, Stephen Bantu Biko. Born on December 18th, 1946 in the small town of King Williamstown, Steve Biko grew up witnessing the daily injustices of apartheid. He entered the University of Natal Medical School and found his voice. He appears to have decided that political movements led by white liberals could not truly represent the black majority. In 1968, Biko co-founded the South African Students Organization, a group that gave black students their own platform. Out of SASO reportedly emerged the message, "The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed." Black consciousness called on Africans to reclaim their dignity, pride, and identity, to reject the lies of inferiority imposed by apartheid. Biko's ideas inspired a generation. His words reached far beyond universities, igniting a cultural and political awakening in the townships. The apartheid regime took notice. In 1973, the government banned Biko, forbidding him from speaking publicly, traveling, or being quoted. But even under restrictions in his hometown, he continued to write and inspire. His home became a quiet center of resistance. In August 1977, Biko was arrested by security police. For 26 days, he was interrogated and brutally beaten. On September 12, 1977, Steve Biko died of brain injuries in police custody, only 30 years old. His death shocked the world. Photographs of his battered body caused outrage against the apartheid government. Across South Africa and far beyond, his message grew louder, not silenced. Steve Biko did not live to see a free South Africa, but his spirit lived on in those who carried his words into the struggle. For historical figure number 9, we go to Switzerland, Jean-Jacque Rousseau. Jean-Jacque Rousseau was born on June 28, 1712 in Geneva, Switzerland, a city of thinkers and reformers. His mother died shortly after his birth, and his father, a watchmaker, fled Geneva when Rousseau was just 10. By his 20s, Rousseau had made his way to Paris, where he mingled with the leading Enlightenment figures of his age, Voltaire, Diderot, and others. But Rousseau appears to have never been quite at ease among them. Where others praised reason and progress, Rousseau looked inward, toward emotion, nature, and the corruption he saw in modern society. In 1750, he gained fame with his Discourse on the Arts and Sciences, arguing that civilization had not improved humankind, it had corrupted it. A few years later, his Discourse on the Origin of Inequality went even further, suggesting that private property was the root of social injustice. Man is born free, he wrote, and everywhere he is in chains. Those words, born free, would echo through history. In the Social Contract of 1762, Rousseau proposed that legitimate government rests on the general will of the people, not on kings or nobles. His ideas inspired the leaders of the French Revolution and helped define modern democracy. Rousseau also believed in the power of education and emotion. In Emily, he described how a child should learn by experience, guided by curiosity rather than strict discipline. His belief that humans are naturally good and corrupted by society influenced generations of educators, philosophers, and political thinkers. Jean-Jacque Rousseau died in 1778. He was a man of contradictions, proud and humble, idealistic and paranoid, revolutionary and romantic. Yet his message remains, reminding us to question power, value authenticity, and rediscover our connection to nature and one another. Okay, we wrap up this chapter heading to the Far East, to the nation of Japan for historical figure number 10, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. In the mid-1500s, Japan was a land torn apart by civil war. Powerful warlords, the daimyo, fought endlessly for control. Amid this chaos, Toyotomi Hideyoshi rose to achieve what no samurai before him could, the unification of Japan. Hideyoshi was born in 1537 in what is now Nagoya City in the Aichi Prefecture, the son of a peasant foot soldier. With no samurai lineage and no formal education, his prospects were bleak, but he had ambition and an extraordinary gift for strategy and persuasion. As a young man, Hideyoshi joined the army of the fierce warlord Oda Nobunaga, who sought to bring order to Japan. Though starting as a sandal bearer, Hideyoshi's cleverness quickly caught Nobunaga's eye, and he rose through the ranks from servant to general. In 1582, Nobunaga was betrayed and forced to take his own life. Amid the turmoil, Hideyoshi acted swiftly. He avenged his master's death and consolidated power, emerging as Nobunaga's true successor. Over the next decade, Hideyoshi subdued rival lords through a blend of diplomacy and force. In 1590, he had unified Japan, the first leader ever to do so. He built magnificent castles such as Osaka Castle, reformed land ownership, and froze social classes, ensuring peasants remained farmers and samurai remained warriors. But his ambition didn't stop at Japan's shores. In 1592, Hideyoshi launched invasions of Korea, hoping to reach China and expand his empire. The campaigns failed, draining Japan's resources and costing countless lives. Hideyoshi died in 1598, leaving behind a fragile peace and a child too young to rule. His death reopened the struggle for power, which would culminate in the rise of Tokugawa Ieyasu and the start of the Tokugawa shogunate. Toyotomi Hideyoshi's journey from peasant to ruler of Japan remains one of the most extraordinary stories in world history. A man of unmatched ambition, he reshaped Japan's destiny and proved that greatness could be born from even the humblest beginnings. So that is our list for the 4th chapter in the series. If you found the video informative or entertaining, you know the drill. Hit the like button and subscribe to receive notification of future entries. YouTube won't put the video in front of people without some affirmation. As always, I appreciate your time and look forward to comments and suggestions on other historical figures to cover. Thank you.